I want you to sit with something for a moment. Something a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
It's a sound, but it's also a feeling. You know, when you're in a room that is just perfectly, almost terrifyingly silent, and the only thing you can hear is a clock?
That really precise rhythmic ticking.
Exactly. It's so sharp, it's sterile, it feels, I don't know, it feels like a countdown.
It's mechanical. Cold.
Right. And I was sitting in my office last night reading through this stack of research you sent over for our deep dive, and that sound, it bored right into my skull. It felt like a machine.
Hmm.
And then while reading this text, my mind sort of drifted to this totally different image. A canyon.
A canyon. That's quite a leap.
I know, right? But just picture it. A vast, empty landscape, just this hollow wind blowing through these ancient rock formations where, maybe no human has stepped for 1,000 years. Just emptiness.
Yeah.
And mist.
That's a striking image, and it's funny you say that because it actually aligns perfectly with the opening arguments of the material we're covering today.
Really? How so?
That mist you're imagining. The source argues that humanity has been wandering in exactly that kind of fog for centuries. A fog of confusion about who, or even what, we actually are.
It's that sensation, and I know I have it, and I would bet anything that you listening have felt it too, that we are somehow trapped inside ourselves.
Wrapped in what sense, though?
You know the feeling that I'm located somewhere just behind my eyes, like I'm this little pilot sitting in a control room looking out through these two windows.
Right, and my hands are just tools I'm operating from a distance. My voice is just a speaker system I'm broadcasting through.
Yes. The body is a vehicle, a meat suit, a biological page. But the real me, the pilot, the ghost, something else entirely. I'm separate. I'm a prisoner in a fleshy chest.
What you're describing there, that's what philosophers and theologians for literally thousands of years have called the dualistic experience.
Realistic, 2 parts.
Exactly. It's the default setting for human consciousness. And it's what our source material for today refers to as the ancient fable.
The fable of the captive ghost. I love that phrasing.
It's perfect, isn't it? It's this incredibly widespread belief that a human being is a composite of two completely distinct, almost opposing substances. You've got the clay, the physical body, the machine.
The hardware.
The hardware, yes.
Yeah.
And then you have the spirit or the soul, which is this non-physical, ghostly individual that gets, infused into the machine at birth.
And the logic just follows from there. When the car breaks down, when we die, the ghost just unbuckles its seatbelt, kicks open the door, and floats away.
It's a comforting story. It might be the most popular story in human history.
Of course it is. It solves the problem of death by just saying, hey, don't worry, the real you isn't the car, so the car crashing doesn't really matter in the long run.
It's incredibly comforting.
Yeah.
But this is where the pivot comes, and it is a sharp one. The source material we're covering, the unified self, a rational harmony of Nafs and Ru, proposes that this map we've all been using,
Yeah.
it's upside down. It argues that this dualism, this separation of me versus my body, is a profound cognitive illusion.
It asks this radical question, and honestly, it's one that made me put the book down for a second when I read it. What if there is no ghost?
Or, to be a bit more nuanced, what if the clay and spirit aren't two separate entities just sort of waving at each other from across a great divide? What if they're, as the source puts it, intricately entwined?
So not two things, but one integrated system.
What if the you, the person who loves jazz, hates cilantro, and is afraid of that ticking clock, isn't a passenger in the vehicle at all? What if you are the result of the vehicle actually functioning?
See, that is exactly where I get that little bit of vertigo. Because if I'm not the pilot, then what am I? The gear stick, the exhaust fumes. It feels, reductive. It feels like it strips all the magic out of being human.
And I completely understand that reaction. I had it too. It sounds like pure materialism at first glance, the idea that we're all just wet robots.
Right, just complex chemistry.
But the source is arguing for something far more sophisticated, far more elegant. It's trying to dismantle the phantom of dualism, not to diminish the human being, but to properly integrate it. We're going to look at this through a rational, intellectual lens and apply it to a Quranic framework that offers a surprisingly technical view of human architecture.
So we're not just philosophizing. We are going to try and rebuild the human being from the ground up based on these concepts.
We are. And to do that, we need a better metaphor than the ghost in the machine. So we're going to build a car, a high-performance vehicle.
I like this. Okay. If we want to understand the driver, we have to understand the mechanics of the ride. So looking at the outline, we have a clear roadmap. We're going to analyze the hardware first, then the ignition, then the driver. And finally, the steering.
And this is where it's going to get a little linguistic, so stay with me. We have to unpack three specific Arabic terms that people, especially in translation, usually mash together as synonyms. But in this framework, they mean distinctly, critically different things. Nafs, ruh, and aqla.
The self, the spirit, and the intellect. But I have a feeling those simple English translations are about to get completely dismantled.
Oh, completely. They're just placeholders for now.
Okay, let's do it. Let's pop the hood, let's get our hands dirty, and look at the engine block. Let's talk about the ignition, the ruh.
Before we define it, let's start with what you think ruh means. When you hear that word spirit, what comes to your mind?
I think of personality, essence. If I say, my grandfather's spirit is still with us, I mean his kindness, his specific sense of humor, the way he smelled of pipe tobacco. I mean him, the individual.
Right. That's the standard model. In the Ghost in the Machine story, people equate the spirit, the ruh, with the personality. They think the ruh is the ghost. But our source says absolute hard stop. That is fundamentally incorrect.
Incorrect how? Not just a different interpretation, but flat out wrong.
According to this rationalist framework, yes. The source defines ruh not as a personality, not as a ghostly individual living in your chest, but as a mirror.
A mirror, that sounds like a command, like an order being given.
That's exactly what it translates to, the command, the silence, the fierce. Think of it less like a person and more like voltage.
Voltage. Okay. So that wind sound I mentioned earlier, the mist, that's the wrong soundscape.
Forget the wind. The wind implies atmosphere, something ethereal. I want you to imagine something different. Imagine microscopic, high-fidelity electrical crackles, the low hum of a massive subterranean power grid that's lighting up a whole continent. That's the ruh in this framework.
So it's pure energy. It's the power, not the appliance.
The source uses the analogy of the uncreated current, or even software that runs the hardware. Let's go back to our vehicle. You have the body. That's the hardware.
The chassis, the engine, the seats, the wiring.
Everything. The brain, the heart, the nerves, the cells. It's all sitting there in the garage. It's perfect. Every atom is in place. But is it moving? Is it alive?
No, it's just dead matter. A corpse is a fully assembled piece of hardware, but it's not doing anything. It's static.
Exactly. It needs the divine ignition. It needs the current to flow through the circuits to wake the system up. The source brings up a key verse here from Surah Al-Hijr, where it mentions God breathing of his ruh into the human form.
Okay, stop right there, because that's the line, God breathing of his ruh. This is usually where people get that whole divine spark idea. They think, oh, God put a literal piece of himself in me, so I'm part God. I'm divine.
And that is a very, very dangerous theological cliff to walk off of. The rationalist perspective here argues vehemently against that interpretation. It says this isn't God transferring a literal part of himself because the creator isn't a pie. He isn't made of divisible parts that can be sliced off and handed out.
So if it's not a piece of God, what is being breathed in? What is being transferred?
The principle of life, the divine directive. It is the command for inert matter to become animate. It's the activation code.
Okay, I think I need another analogy. The car one is good, but let's get simpler.
Think of a toaster. I know, it's not a high-performance vehicle, but stick with me for a second.
Yeah.
You plug a toaster into the wall socket.
Right.
The electricity from the power plant flows into it and makes the heating elements glow red hot. The toaster becomes alive in a functional sense. It's now performing its function. Now, my question is the electricity the toaster?
No, of course not. The electricity is just the energy making it work.
And does the electricity coming out of that socket have a personality? Does it have a preference for Pop-Tarts over bagels?
Is it a
kind electricity?
No, it's just power. It's the same generic electricity that's powering my blender, my vacuum cleaner, and my TV. It's impersonal.
That's the perfect analogy for ruh in this context. The source says the ruh implies no personality, no distinct face.
Yeah.
It implies pure energy. It fuels the system. It lends the atom's life and the system's grace, as the source poetry puts it.
But it doesn't have an opinion on jazz music. It doesn't have memories of my first day of school.
Not at all. It's the power, not the user.
That is just, it's wild. It completely flips the script on everything I thought I knew. We usually think of the spirit as the most personal, most unique part of us. But you're saying the thing that animates me, the very thing that makes the difference between me being alive right now and me being a corpse, is actually completely impersonal.
It is universal. The source points directly to Surah Al-Isra, chapter 17, verse 85. And they ask you concerning the ruh, say, the ruh is of the affair. The armor of my lord.
The affair, the command. So it belongs to the grid, not to my individual house.
Precisely. It's the lightning flash.
The lightning flash.
Yes, the lightning flash that wakes the biological dream. It's what distinguishes the living from the inanimate. Without it, you are just a collection of chemicals. With it, you are biology in motion.
But wait a minute. If the Ru is just this battery power,
Right.
and it comes directly from God and it powers me, then is it judged? Does it have any accountability for what I do with that power?
Let me ask you this. Does the electricity company judge the toaster for burning the bread?
No. That would be insane.
Exactly. And the source is really, really specific about this. Because the Ru is just the power source, the ignition spark. It is not judged. How could it be? It has no will of its own. It's a force of nature, a command. It answers only to the Creator because it is the Creator's command in action.
So when the machine halts,
Yeah.
when the body dies, what happens to it?
That breath, that current, simply returns to the high fire, as the source calls it.
He goes back to the grid.
Goes back to the source. And this implies something profound. The Ru is perfectly pure, perfectly functional, and completely devoid of any human identity. It enters you pure, and it leaves you pure, regardless of what you did with the energy while you had it.
Okay. I think I'm following you. But I have to admit, I'm also getting a little bit of existential dread here.
Oh, why is that?
Because if the Ru, the spirit, is just the electricity, and it has no personality, no memory, no meanness to it, and my body is just the hardware, just the meat that's going to decay, then we have a huge, gaping problem.
What is the problem?
The problem is me. Who am I? If the spirit isn't my personality, and the body is just a corpse waiting to rot, where is the person? Where is the I that is talking to you right now? Do we just analyze the human being completely out of existence?
Ah, you've found the void. You've seen the empty driver's seat. But now we leave the engine bay. Now we have to open the car door and get inside the cabin. Now we need to talk about the Nafs.
The Nafs. Okay, this is the word that's usually translated as soul or self.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, but self is a much better translation here.
Right.
Or even identity.
Yeah.
The source has a beautiful term for it. The emergent reality.
Emergent. Okay, that's a big word in complexity science. Emergence is when you get complex patterns arising from a set of simple interactions, like wetness.
Go on.
Well, wetness isn't in a single water molecule. You can't look at one H2O molecule under a microscope and find the property of wet. It doesn't exist there. But you put a billion of them together, and you get the ocean. You get the emergent property of wetness.
That is a perfect example. Or think about a melody. You play one single note on a piano. That's just a vibration in the air. You play another. Just another vibration. But if you play them in a specific sequence with rhythm and timing.
You get a song, you get music, and the song isn't in the piano itself, and it isn't in the finger that presses the key. It emerges from the interaction between them.
There you go. So now let's apply that to us, to our car.
Okay.
The source describes the Nafs not as a passenger that was dropped into the car from the sky, but as the song of the vessel. It's the bloom that rises from the biological vine.
I love that image, the bloom that rises from the biological vine. Even if it is a bit spooky, it means the self isn't a foreign object implanted in me. It's homegrown. It grew here.
Precisely. Let's change our soundscape again. That sharp electrical crackle of the Ru, it needs to smooth out. It needs to become rhythmic. I want you to imagine a biological pulse, a steady heartbeat mixed with the subtle, intricate sound of nerve and vein.
The sound of a living system.
Yes. The Nafs is what happens when the Ru, that high-voltage, impersonal energy, meets the body, which is this incredibly complex biological hardware. The Nafs is the friction, it's the heat, it's the noise, it is the consciousness that emerges from that collision of energy and matter.
So I'm not a ghost inside the machine. I am the machine running.
You are the running of the machine. You are the specific, subjective experience of that specific body being alive. You are what the source calls the weaver. The Nafs is the entity that feels sensory joy and throbbing pain. It is the weaver of virtue and sin.
This feels much more fragile than the ghost story. If I'm a ghost, I'm this indestructible, ethereal thing. If I'm a song, well, songs end.
They do. But it also makes you much more real, doesn't it? It connects everything together into what the source calls the complete being. And this is backed up scripturally. Think about Surah Al-Imran chapter 3, verse 185. Every nafs will taste death.
Every nafs will taste death. I've heard that verse 1,000 times, usually at funerals.
But read it closely with this new lens. It doesn't say everybody will taste death and the nafs will fly away to the clouds. It says the nafs itself tastes death.
Because if the nafs is the emergent reality of the living being, Then when the being stops living,
The nafs, in its current state, experiences that cessation. It experiences the end of the song. The system shutting down is an experience for the system.
that verse confirms that the nafs, is the entity that actually matters. This is the thing that lives and dies and is ultimately compensated or held accountable. The nafs is the you on the throne.
The identity that sits upon the throne, as the poem in the source says, it's a living record etched on cerebral stone. It is the sum total of your laughter, your logic, your choices, your tears, your memories.
That phrase, etched on cerebral stone, it's so beautiful, but it's also incredibly heavy. It implies that everything I do, every single thought I have, it's physically etching itself into the structure of who I am. I'm not just observing my life from a distance. I am the accumulation of my life's inputs and outputs.
Precisely. You are the sum total of the entire drive. And in our vehicle analogy, the nafs is the driver.
But wait a second. This is where the analogy gets a little bit tricky for me. If the nafs emerges from the car, if it's the song of the engine, how can it then turn around and drive the car? The song doesn't play the piano plays the song.
And that is the great paradox of consciousness. That's the hard problem that neuroscience is still grappling with. We are biological processes that have somehow miraculously become aware of ourselves. We are a feedback loop. The driver is generated by the car. But then, and this is the absolute miracle of our existence, it gains the ability to grab the wheel and control the car.
That is some ghost in the shell level philosophy right there. We are the software that learns to write itself.
And realizes it can turn the steering wheel. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The nafs, this emergent driver, doesn't start out as a Formula One champion. It doesn't just pop into existence with a driver's license and a perfect map of the world. No, it starts out messy. It starts out blind, reactive. And this brings us to the third part of our roadmap, the internal tempest.
The tempest, a storm inside.
Because this driver isn't a static entity. The source calls it a dynamic moral agent. It's supposed to evolve. It's on a journey. Think about a newborn baby, or even a toddler. They have a nafs. But what is that nafs concerned with?
Milk, sleep, comfort, screaming at the top of its lungs if it doesn't get any of those things immediately.
Exactly. Pure desire, pure reaction to stimuli. The source talks about this as the first stage of the self, the commanding self. In the original Arabic, it's nafs al-amara.
Nafs al-amara, the self that commands.
Commands what? Commands evil is the literal translation. But you can think of it as commanding the satisfaction of its own base desires. The source describes this stage as the private war, the self with appetites uncurbed.
So this is the driver who has just slammed their foot on the accelerator and is holding it to the floor.
Imagine a driver who just wants to go fast, who wants to crash through barriers because it looks fun, who wants to run other cars off the road because they're in the way. It's driven by fleeting lower wishes. It's the aid in Freudian terms. It's pure impulse.
It's the raw, untrained driver gripping the wheel with white knuckles, totally and entirely focused on the feeling of, I want.
It's a restless ocean beating at the shore. That soundscape you mentioned at the start. The hollow wind, forget that. Now it's a storm, a chaotic, crashing, violent ocean. That's the internal state of the unrefined self.
But we don't stay there, or at least I hope most of us don't. I mean, I definitely know some people who seem to be permanently stuck in that stage.
We all visit there. Road rage is a visit to Nafs al-Amara. Binge eating a whole pint of ice cream until you feel sick is Nafs al-Amara. But the design of the human system, thankfully, allows for evolution. And from that chaos, something can rise. A reproaching voice. The self-reproaching soul. The source references Surah Al-Qiyamah, chapter 75, verse 2, where God swears an oath by this self-reproaching soul. This is the awakening of conscience.
The morning star rising from the strife. I really, really like that imagery. It's that moment. It's that moment when you snap at your partner because you're tired and stressed, and then 5 minutes later, you're standing alone in the kitchen, staring at the fridge, just thinking, why did I do that? I'm an idiot. I need to go apologize.
That moment, that sting of regret, that feeling of, I could have done better, that is the lawama waking up. That is the reproaching voice. It's the driver suddenly realizing they're swerving all over the road. It's the correction mechanism kicking in. It's the stage of guilt, self-correction, and the constant struggle to control the wheel.
It's so interesting that guilt is presented here as a sign of progress. Usually we think of guilt as this terrible negative emotion to be avoided at all costs.
In this framework, that kind of guilt is proof of life. It's proof that the driver is waking up and actually looking at the road. If you didn't feel the guilt, you'd still be in the commanding stage, completely oblivious. The lawama is the friction of moral growth.
And honestly, I feel like that's where most of us live most of the time, in that messy middle ground. Swerving and correcting, it's exhausting.
It is the central struggle of the human condition. But it's not the final destination. The goal of this entire journey, the purpose of the drive, is to reach the third stage. Nafs amatmena.
The tranquil soul, the soul at peace.
O tranquil soul, return to your Lord well pleased and pleasing to him. That's from Surah Al-Fajr.
Yeah.
This is the driver who has finally, after a long journey, mastered the vehicle.
Healed of the wound, the tremor, and the scar.
And this is a crucial point, a place where many people misunderstand spirituality. The source emphasizes that this tranquility, this peace, is not achieved by escaping the flesh. You don't get there by trying to jump out of the moving car.
Right, you don't achieve it by ignoring the body's needs or starving yourself into some kind of detached state or pretending you don't have physical desires.
No, you achieve it by what the source calls mastery deep over it. You become such a skilled and experienced driver that the car does exactly what it's supposed to do, almost effortlessly. You're not fighting the steering wheel anymore. You are in perfect alignment with the road, with the traffic laws, and with your ultimate destination. It's what elite athletes call the zone, or what psychologists call a flow state.
So the goal isn't to kill the commanding self, to destroy that engine of desire, but to tame it.
To channel it. The engine, your desires, your energy, your ambition is still incredibly powerful. But now the driver is calm, focused, and in control. The storm has finally settled. The ocean is like glass.
Which brings us to a very, very important question. If I'm the driver, and I'm trying to get from this chaotic storm to that tranquil haven, how do I know the way? What keeps me from just driving off a cliff when the fog rolls in? What is my
You need a steering mechanism. You need a GPS. You need part 4 of our model, the scepter of reason, goal, the intellect.
Now, I really want to distinguish this because when we use the word intellect today, we usually mean like being good at math or being able to solve a crossword puzzle quickly. He has a high IQ. But the source seems to be pointing to something much bigger, much more profound than just raw processing speed.
So much bigger. In this framework, Aql isn't just smarts, it's the weighing scale. It's the final crown placed upon this miraculous union of body and spirit.
When I was reading this section, the soundscape in my head changed again. It wasn't the crackling electricity or the stormy ocean. I heard structure, like a slow, swelling orchestral crescendo, something mathematical but also majestic, like a piece by Bach.
That fits perfectly, because the Aql is the sovereign intellect. It is what steers the chariot of the soul. The source references Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 164, where it speaks of the signs in creation for a people who use reason. The verb is yaqilun.
It's the faculty that takes all these scattered fragments of impulse and data and binds them into a coherent whole.
Think about the commanding self, that raw impulse. It wants to eat the entire cake. It wants to lash out in anger and seek revenge. That is instinct.
Right. It's pure animal instinct. A lion feels hunger, it kills. It feels threatened, it attacks. There's no intermediary step.
And Aql is the faculty that steps into that gap. It's the circuit breaker that says, hold on, wait a second. If I eat that entire cake, I will feel sick and regret it. If I take revenge, I will go to jail or start a never-ending feud. It distinguishes raw instinct from universal law. It holds the rebellious ego in awe.
So without Aql, the driver is just reacting to whatever is immediately in front of them on the road.
Without Aql, the driver is blind or drunk. The Aql is the specific trait that grants the Nafs the capacity for accountability.
This is a huge point in the source material, this idea of accountability.
It's everything. It's the answer to the age-old question. Why are human beings judged for their actions, but animals aren't? A tiger isn't evil for eating gazelle. It's just being a tiger.
Because the tiger has Ru, the energy, and a basic nafsa self, an instinct for survival, but it lacks this higher order Aql.
It lacks the steering wheel of reason. It can't choose not to be a tiger. It's running on its base programming.
But we aren't. We are not animals guided solely by instinct. We possess the faculty to judge our own deeds and words. We can run simulations of the future in our minds. We can understand long-term consequences. We can choose to go against our immediate selfish desire for a higher collective good.
So the Aql is the tool the driver uses to navigate the map.
It is the scepter. It's what gives the driver authority over the powerful wild vehicle. And if you refuse to use your Aql, if you just let your emotions and impulses drive the car, you are essentially letting go of the steering wheel on the highway. And whatever crash happens next, well, that's on you.
That's a terrifying thought. But it's also incredibly empowering, isn't it? It means we aren't helpless victims of our own programming. We have a tool, a divine gift, to override it.
We do. Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've been taking this car apart piece by piece here in the garage. Let's reassemble the whole vehicle. Let's look at the marvel of union.
Let's do it. Review the components for us.
Okay, first we have the hardware, the body and the brain, the physical vessel, the loom upon which everything else is woven.
Then you have the ignition, the roux, the divine directive, the amour, the universal impersonal energy that wakes it all up. Not a ghost, but the power source.
Then, emerging from the interaction of those two, you get the driver, the Nafs, me, you. The emergent personality, the conscious moral agent that rises from the mix of body and energy and begins its journey of development.
And finally, placed in the hands of that driver, you have the steering, the ACL, the intellect, the faculty of reason that allows the driver to navigate and be held accountable for the journey.
When you lay it out like that, the phantom of dualism really does just dissolve. It evaporates. There is no ghost haunting a machine. There is just this one integrated reality.
It's a completely holistic model. Flesh and purpose are blended in one nexus, as the source puts it. You aren't in your body like a man in a boat. You are your body, animated and conscious.
But this brings us right back to the ultimate question, the one we started this whole deep dive with: death.
The verdict at the journey's end.
If I'm the music and the instrument breaks, where does the music go? If there is no ghost to fly away, what happens when the screen goes black?
The source is both poetic and incredibly precise here. It says, no ghost departs, but the accountable I, preserved in truth when mortal engines cease.
Mortal engines cease. That's death. The hardware fails. The ignition, the roux, returns to the source because the circuit is broken. The sound stops. The car is still.
But the song, the pattern, the accountable I that is preserved.
It's like if you write a brilliant, beautiful novel on your computer. You spend your whole life on it. And then you take a sledgehammer and you smash the computer to bits. The computer, the hardware is destroyed. The electricity from the wall socket is gone. But the novel itself, the information, the unique pattern of that story.
It's saved in the cloud. It's preserved in the knowledge of the creator.
In the truth. And it's a pattern that we ourselves have woven. Beneath a law-abiding sky, as the text puts it, we construct our ruin or our eternal peace.
That phrase, it just chills me to the bone every time I read it.
Yeah.
We construct our ruin.
It means every time I swerved the car, every single time I let the road rage of the Nafs Alamara take over, I was writing a chapter of that novel. I was etching a flaw into the pattern. I was actively constructing a version of myself that is broken.
And every time you used your ACL, every time you listened to that reproaching voice and steered back to the center lane, you were constructing your peace. You were building a self that is tranquil, coherent, and beautiful.
It puts a tremendous, almost unbearable amount of weight on the now, on this very moment.
It does. The ghost story dualism can sometimes make us a bit lazy. It can make us think the body is just a wrapper, a disposable suit. Oh, I'm a spiritual being. This physical body doesn't matter. This world doesn't matter.
But this unified self-view says, no, absolutely not. The body is the loom upon which the soul is woven. You cannot have the weaving without the loom. You can't become a tranquil soul without first passing through the struggle of the commanding self in a physical body.
A marvel of design, from dust to thought. That's the phrase from the source that just stuck with me for days. We are dust that has somehow learned to think.
And that has learned to love, and to judge, and to feel regret.
And that ultimately has to answer for how it drove the car.
This brings us to the end of the line. The final concept the source leaves us with, the trustee's burden.
The trustee's burden by the creator wrought. Because we are trusted with this vehicle. We didn't build it. We didn't design the DNA. We didn't create the laws of physics or the electricity that runs our own neurons.
We didn't even ask for the keys. They were just handed to us.
No, but we are the ones behind the wheel. We are the trustees.
It's a very heavy view. There's no separation. There's no spiritual life over here on Sunday and physical life over there the rest of the week. It's all one integrated thing. How I treat my body is a spiritual act. How I think is a physical event in my brain.
The conscious self is the living, breathing product of both.
So let's go back to that silence we started with.
The silence of the ticking clock.
The trustee's burden by the creator wrought.
It is the burden and the honor of being real.
So here's the final thought for you to take with you. If you are not a ghost in a machine, but you are the machine and the driver and the journey all at once, How does that change how you drive today?